I'm just talking away, y'all. I'm on mute. I'm just talking away. I'm glad, Elder Finn. Thank you for having your brother back, man. Thank you for having your brother back. I'm sitting here, man, uh just talking away on mute. So thank you for helping me out with that. Can everybody hear me? If y'all can hear me, man, put a one up in the chat. If everybody can hear me, put a one up in the chat. If you can hear me, put a one up in the chat. I want to make sure you can hear me. But thank you. But I definitely want to just say, man, I'm jumping in to have this discussion. I want to talk about this and really just thought it was a kung fu movie. Yeah, man. I just want to talk about this. So let me shout out a couple people in the chat, man. So that way, definitely want to show some love to y'all. I'm gonna start from the top once again. Shout out to Brother Kenneth Wilson. Shout out to Elder Mark James. Shout out to Barbara Blackwell, Brother Devorius. Shout out to Elder Fenton Ramsey. Shout out to Brother Timothy Merritt. Shout out to Sister Barbara Blackwell. I think I said you already. Shout out to Brother Judah, Brother Anthony. What's going on? And also shout out to Brother Ricky as well. Thank you all for tuning in and jumping on. I'm going to talk about this. I want to discuss this. I'm not going to even show the video because I think that a lot of people have seen the video, and you don't have to always engage in conversation about things. And sometimes it just calls for you to have a biblical conversation about certain matters. It doesn't always require you to be involved. Everybody sometimes want to comment and do videos and talk about everything, that goes on. It's not enough time in the day to deal with every issue that is going on, but some issues and some things, especially when those things boil down to dealing with the Messiah, I think that it's very important to be able to look at it. And really, sometimes you have to take your emotions out of it from the perspective. There's nothing wrong with being emotional, but you just have to be careful and make sure that your emotions don't drive you to the point of, and that's the agenda, to be driven by emotions and to pretty much shine a light on particular situations, but not from the perspective of edification. I think that there should be something that if you're going to respond and talk about something, it should always be from edification. What's going on? Shalom, shalom, Brother Tony. What's going on, Brother Tony? What's going on with you? Thank you all for jumping in and tuning in. So I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to jump on here and I want to look at something because just from the video, and that's the thing. That's the thing with illustrations. I think in today's time, I think so many people, that's kind of a thing. That was at one point in time, pastors doing illustrations was it almost became like a fad. Everybody feel like when they teach, they got to have the most dynamic teaching involving illustrations. I'm not saying illustrations are not biblical. I think illustrations are biblical. I even think that the Messiah, there were times when he would use illustrations. One, we would see he would use children. He would talk. Some of his illustrations weren't in the presence of the people. Sometimes it would be from a knowing of a conversation of something that they know about. He talks about sometimes consider the lilies, of the field. So he would use demonstrations or certain things. Sometimes there would be props in front of him, and sometimes the Messiah would use things that they know about as a demonstration. So it doesn't always have to be a visual demonstration. And there were definitely times of healing when he healed people that he would also use people in the presence as a demonstration to bring something to a truth of showing the Pharisees or whoever how incapable of spiritual understanding that they had. Let me also give a shout out to some more brothers in the building, sisters as well. Shout out to Sister Rachel. What's going on? Brother Darrell Williams. Also, what's going on? Deacon Philip Fowler. Shalom to you as well. Shalom to my lovely wife, Emma Brown. Thank you for jumping on as well, honey. So I want everybody to look at this, and I want to, and so there's been this thing, whether it's, it's right or wrong, and things like that. And I'm going to allow the scriptures. I think I think that's the thing. And that's why I was talking about earlier about making sure that that you don't react. And it's hard not to react. This morning, I'm telling y'all, I had uh, uh, one of the most vocal reactions after the video. I got the video sent to me, or I was tagged in the video or whatnot. I had one of the most outburst reactions that I generally don't react to a lot of things. I generally, kind of process things and then respond, because I want to make sure that if I'm going to respond, that it's edifying. But this morning I was just like, man, I was overwhelmed by what I saw. And my wife, to the point my wife was just like, what's going on? And she couldn't even watch the whole thing. I couldn't even watch the whole thing. And so this is very key to what I'm going to show you here in a minute, which is very important, that I think that we all must understand. Again, so many people, at one point in time, you had these movements throughout certain time periods within the church. You have certain movements that may last 10 years. There was one time there was the movement of everybody wanted to be an apostle. There was a movement, everybody wanted to be a prophet. There's a movement, everybody was doing the evangelism. We're going, into many countries, and these things at certain periods of time, they go and they come, and then they come back again. It's the same thing with visuals, with a lot of visual teachings. Everybody want to be, the ultimate visual teachings. People use all kind of props to try to bring forth a truth. And my thing is, again, there's nothing wrong with visual aids, but I don't think that that's something that is needed for people to grasp, to paint a picture, or to present an illustration of some things. And we also have to understand that we're not the Messiah. That's another thing that I want to make sure people understand. Yes, we've been given the power to be able to accomplish certain things, but also we still have a situation that the Messiah didn't have. He overcame his flesh. He suppressed his flesh. With us, many of us, we still struggle and deal with it. So we're limited in the capacity of certain things. So therefore, there's certain things that we would do that won't bring forth edification, and it'll cause more problems and chaos. There's certain things that we say. This is why it's very important. We have to watch what we also say, because yes, we may be truthful in what we're saying, but it's not edifying. And I think that people really don't have really need to understand that. Let me give a couple more shout outs before I get into this, and I'm going to peel out here. Shout out to brother Gabriel Byron Lewis. What's up, brother? Sister Nicoya Skipper. What's going on with you, Prophet Doc Mateo Smith? What's going on, Pastor Demetrius Wilson and Neville Williams? What's going on? So let's get into this. I want to look at this because, again, for those of you who don't know, if you haven't seen the video, there's a pastor by the name of Mike Todd. He's a very popular pastor. He loves doing visual demonstrations of things, and so he's known to have some very out there demonstrations. But I think also that this one may have topped them all, and this one have topped them all. And from what I understand, it was his blood brother who was the prop in this demonstration. That's neither here nor there. But at the same time, I'm going to show you why. Of course, we know that Yeshua did do these things. We know that the Messiah did do these things. But I'm going to show you how what Mike Todd did becomes ineffective when it comes down to, you see what's going on now. Even other Christians are blown away by this, right? I'm going to show you the difference between the Messiah, and maybe there was he may have had the right intention And I'm gonna leave that. I always leave on the table. I don't want to never try to say that I know a person's intention about something, but I will just say this, that maybe his intentions were right, but what he did has caused more problems than helping. Okay, I'll just say that, especially amongst those who are believers and non-believers, right? At the end of the day, everything that the Messiah did, it was edifying, even though the religious people, right? The religious people, they didn't receive what he was doing, but what he did was edifying. I'm going to show you the difference between Mike Todd and what he tried to do in mimicking the Messiah and him trying to bring forth a truth. Okay, I'm going to show you right now. We're going to look at this, right? Let's look at this. All right, let me share my screen. All right, let me share my screen real quick, and let's look at it here. Okay, if I can find, let me find this. I got a new laptop, so I'm working on trying to do this. Okay, let me go back here. Okay, all right, I think y'all can see it. I need to get to my other screen. Okay. All right, so let's look at this here. We're going to go into Bible Gateway. All right, so there we go. All right, I end up closing the screen by mistake, but it's all good. Technology is great. All right, so I hope everybody can see this, right? Yeah, and that was something that was Deacon Phillip, that was, everybody had a barf bag. You know, I'm not going to show the video. I'm not going to show the video. Too many people have seen it, so you already know. My point is to contrast and compare, that we all contrast and compare whether what he did was the same thing that the Messiah did, and did he have the same mindset of the Messiah? Okay, so let's look at this, right? So we understand that I'm going to use three different situations in the Gospels to show where there was a saliva used that the Messiah used, and all three of them have the same. They're in the same situation, right? So we all know that the Messiah knew the thoughts of the people that were around him. He knew the mindset of the people that were around him. That's very key. When you are an individual, especially one in leadership, I was just doing a teaching this past Saturday, Shabbat, on about discernment. I was talking about being like the Messiah. That's the direction that we're going in 2022, about being like the Messiah, right? Even in our responses and everything that we do, when we walk like him, talk like him, our responses, how we deal with people, how we respond to people, all of these things. But one major key that the Messiah possessed, that I think that all of us, regardless, is we need to make sure that that in our prayers, we need to make sure that we're praying that the Father give us a level of discernment to know the people that are around us, because discernment is also going to help you with how you respond. Discernment is also going to help you to protect you from others that are in your presence who may not have the same spirit as you, but also at the same time, discernment also gives you a level of wisdom in how you move and maneuver and things like that. So the Messiah had he had a level of discernment that was unmatched, in which we all, even Paul talks about in 1 Corinthians chapter number 12, he talks about the level of discernment, right? And that's what the Spirit, the Ruach, gives discernment. So I think it's very important that we understand that. So let's look at this here. We're going to look at this passage in in chapter number 9 here, okay? We're gonna look at this passage in John chapter number 9, and we're gonna look at 10 verses. 10 verses, okay? John chapter number 9, and we're looking at starting at verse number 1. It says, as he passed by, he saw a blind man from birth. So we already know when we're reading the scriptures, we need to make sure that we understand the people, the environment. We need to understand who's the focus of the conversation, because sometimes we like to bring in people that aren't in the conversation, and we try to bring them in from a whole nother generation into a conversation when he's talking to the specific person in that particular generation. And that's how we end up misinterpreting scripture, because sometimes we like to bring in people from outside of other generations and try to equate it to that particular individual. No, we see he's passing by. This is the Messiah. He saw a blind man from birth, right? And his disciples asked him. So we know that the disciples are with him because why? Because they're disciples, they're continuous learners. They're on the job training, okay? They're getting training. So let's look at what he said. Rabbi or teacher, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? So sin, just because you're born blind or you have a disability, that doesn't mean that somebody sinned. Sin doesn't always bring on disabilities, right? It was not this man's sin or his parents. So Yeshua clears it up. So don't y'all have the mindset, well, maybe somebody sinned. You know, even in the old church growing up, you know, when somebody was going through something in their life or something, it was always people love to throw sin on you. Or maybe you sin and maybe it's something you ain't doing in your life. That's the reason why. It's not always that, okay? There's a practical and there's a spiritual element to things, okay? There's a practical thing. Sometimes practical things can require science to heal or science to bring forth a form of deliverance. It doesn't always mean that it's a spiritual matter, okay? So let's continue to look at this, right? All right, so let's look at what it says here. It says, but that's the works of Yah or God might be displayed in him. That's key. That's a whole nother conversation. I'm not going to even expound on that, but I'm going to read it again. He said his parents nor he did not sin, but that the works of God may be displayed in him, right? Verse number 4, we must work the works of him who sent me, all right? While it is day, night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. So he's not talking to everybody, okay? He's not talking to the crowd, because there's times where he talks to the crowd, but there's times where he talks to his disciples, and there's times where he would take his disciples away from the crowd. In this instance, the only people he's having the conversation with is his disciples, and the person that's in question is the blind man from birth. Okay, that's very important for us to understand that. The blind man from birth, and the only people that are there are his disciples that he's having a dialogue and conversation with, right? So yes, there were people always following him, but that don't mean he's always talking to everybody, okay? Let's look what it says here in verse number 5. As long as I'm in the world, I'm the light of the world. Having said these things, he spit on the ground and made mud with saliva. Then he anointed the man's eyes with the mud and said to him, go wash in the pool of Siloam, which means sent. So he went and washed and came back seeing. Stop right there. Let's stop right there. Okay? Let's stop right there. The disciples are the only ones there, and the blind man is the only one there. What Mike Todd did, he didn't do it in front of his disciples, and he didn't do it with a blind man. And I understand he's trying to bring forth an illustration, but he did it in front of the world. See, this is why I'm telling you. There's a practical element of things, and there's a spiritual element of things. There's a level of discernment that you should have, and there's a level of wisdom you should have. At the end of the day, you can be a fool and be gifted. It's nothing worse than a gifted fool, okay? So Yeshua, Jesus, he understands that there's certain things that he can do in front of his disciples, and there's certain things he cannot do in front of the world. Let me get some more shout outs here. I see some more people logging in. All right. Shout out to Morad Dakota. Shout out to Brother Siege. Shout out to Sister Tracy. Shout out to Sister Renee. Shout out to Apostle Daryl Tolbert. Shout out to Moray Pastor Haroon. Shout out to Brother John Dean. Shout out to Elder Eric Johnson, Beat Bros. Shout out to the brother Pastor Curtis Thomas. Shout out to my good friend Bishop Nola McCants. Shout out to let's see here. Shout out to Apostle Stephen Gibson. Shout out to I think it may be Pastor or Brother Orion. I'm sorry if I messed your name up. And shout out to my son Keenan Brown. Okay. All right. So let's look at this. Look at what's happening. This is the very reason why you can't. Everything is not meant for everybody. It's certain situations. Why? Because he understands that the world, you see the same reaction that all of us had because of this demonstration that was taking place by Pastor Mike Todd. Do you see this? You see the reaction? Nobody heard the message. Everybody reacted. And rightfully so. So in the wisdom of the Messiah, he understands that, yes, this is radical, but think about it. We're also living in a time of a pandemic where COVID is going crazy. All of this type of stuff is out here. All this type of disease, everybody wearing masks, everybody scared, all this other stuff, right? Nobody heard the message. That's when you know it's a bad message. When nobody is hearing and receiving edification. Yes, you did it in the name of the Father. You did it in the name of the Son. But the problem is that when it's not edifying and people aren't receiving it, it's a problem. That means people got caught up more in the reaction. The Messiah he understood, he knew that if he had spit in the dirt in front of the people who don't even have the level of faith, it's already his disciples are growing in their faith. Right? Think about it. His disciples are growing in their faith, but they've been walking with him long enough to be able to know that he's proven that he has results in the things that he does. So I can imagine probably some of them was pushed back from it. We don't see it in the text, but I'm pretty sure some of them were like, whoa, what is he doing? Man, he's spitting on the ground. What in the world? And he's rubbing it together. When I'm pretty sure probably some of them probably had questions, just like others had questions when the 72 was together, when he turned around and he said, eat of my flesh and drink of my blood. They thought he was talking about cannibalism. I can imagine if he had spit in front of people, all right, the reaction would have been the same way. But because the Messiah is wise, he understands that he's trying to bring edification to a people. He's not trying to preach a good sermon. Oh, man. There's a difference in people trying to have a good sermon and say that they had a good teaching and had a good demonstration and people being edified. The Messiah was all about edification and not just preaching you good. This is the problem that we got going on right now. Everybody want to be known as a moray, and everybody want to be known as a preacher. Everybody want to know as a pastor. Everybody want to know as an apostle. Everybody know. No. Are you known for edifying the people? That is what the Messiah was doing. And this is the issue that we got. This is why we're here having this conversation about this. I know we don't even have conversations about this type of stuff, but I think it's very well needed. Because I think as we continue to grow, we all should have an understanding of what is going on. And if we're going to follow the Messiah, we need to follow him and understand what his point was. Look at what he said right here in verse number 4. He said, we must work the works of him who sent me. He said, we must work the works. He's talking to his disciples. He's saying that the work that I do is the same work that you must do, meaning you must become like me, do the things that I do. If there's a crowd around and you discern something, you're not trying to grow followers. You're trying to edify people. You're trying to empower people. You're not trying to draw a crowd. You're not trying to make a name for yourself. You're not trying to do any of that. You're trying to edify people. Edify people. And sometimes edifying people requires you to pull one person away and to perform and to be used by the Father to bring forth a miracle to the one person in isolation, so that way that one person can go back and impact and affect a whole community. How do we know this? Look at what happened in verse number 8. The neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar was saying, is this not the man? Why? Because the neighbors were not around when the miracle took place. This is the reason. This is what makes this problem for Mike Todd. And he's going to look back on this and reflect on this. Because why? Because now he's caused more problems. Everything that he did prior to this is gone out of the window. Now everybody is looking at this, and you know what's going to happen? Everybody's going to go and comb through everything that he's done and said and find errors in everything. This is why I keep telling people, social media is, I'm telling you, you need to make sure before you get up here on social media, you get to doing all this other stuff and putting out all these teachings and sayings, you better make sure that that word has worked in you before you put something out there, because you can't get it back. You cannot get it back. Better make sure. But look what it says in verse number 8. It says the neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar were saying, is this not the man who used to sit and beg? Some said it is he. Others said no, but he is like him. He kept saying, I am the man. So they said to him, then how were your eyes open? Why? That tells you they were not there. The people were not there. The crowd wasn't there. YouTube wasn't there. TikTok wasn't there. Instagram wasn't there. No one from the local news station was there. Why? Because Yeshua understood that what he was doing would cause more problems to people who are not mature spiritually. So he understood, I got to be the light, but I can't be the light in being foolish. So he teaches his disciples, which is a teachable moment. He speaks to the man. Then he tells the man, okay, look what it says. I'm going to show you something. Watch this. Verse number 6. He said these things. He spit on the ground. Now this time he spit on the ground. He didn't spit in his hands. He didn't spit in the man's eyes. He didn't spit in the man's mouth. No, he spit on the ground in this time. He spat on the ground and made mud with saliva. Then he anointed the man's eyes with the mud and said to him, go wash in the pool of Siloam. And he went. Wait a minute. How did the man go by himself and he was blind? See, most people don't understand. It's a whole lot of people out here that can physically see, but spiritually blind. They have no guide. They out here reckless, running by themselves. They men unto their own self. They don't have nobody to hold them accountable. They just out here wilding out, but they can see. But the man who's blind from birth, nobody is there. But guess what? He takes his steps on faith. Why? Because he physically can't see. Even after the mud was put on his eyes, he's still blind, but yet his faith is there. So guess what? It required his faith in order for him to take the steps to go wash his eyes. How does he know where the pool is? Nobody's never walked in there. He's never went there by himself. He was blind from birth. He don't even know where the pool is. But yet faith guided him to the pool. Why? Because the day was his deliverance. Not only was the day his deliverance, but it guided him to the pool. Once he got to the pool, it says he went and washed and came back seeing. So he didn't see on his way there. He saw on his way coming back. And guess what? He could have easily, after he saw, kept going about his business. But faith is what healed him, brought him back to the one who healed and delivered him, where it wasn't no crowd. Then the crowd came. Then the crowd saw him on his way coming back. They knew he was blind on his way going, and nobody would even help him. But on his way back, everybody concerned. Everybody want to be concerned now that you can see. I don't need you when I can see. I don't need you when I make it. If you're truly there for me, be there for me when it's dark. Be there for me when my name ain't great. Be there for me in my corner when I can't see. Be a guide for me. But now that he can see, everybody want to be concerned. They're not concerned about and applauding his deliverance and his miracle. Nobody's applauding. Everybody got questions. How he made it. How he doing this. How he doing that. I wonder how this. I wonder how that. I wonder this. I wonder that. All these kind of questions. Everybody asking questions. And nobody is asking who, how, or when, or what healed you. But I bet you they was concerned and they had everything to say when he was begging. See, they identified him as the beggar. Now he don't have to beg no more. Now he don't need assistance anymore. So in this, but I didn't mean to go on that tangent, but at the same time, the crowd is not around when this miracle took place. They saw the results of it, but they didn't see the infancy of it. They didn't see him when he was crawling. They saw him now that he can walk on his own. This is why it's very important to understand that this demonstration that was done has caused more problems than it did in edification. Got to be careful with your demonstrations. All right. Look at what it says. It's the same way in our walk. Make sure that your demonstration, your walk, better make sure it's tight. Look at this. We're going to go to Mark chapter number 7, verse 30 through 35. Look what it says. Mark 7, 30 through 35 says, and she went home and found the child lying in the bed and the demon gone. Now, we're dealing with a deaf man now. The blind man, he healed. We just read that in John. Now we're dealing with a deaf man. Then he returned from the region of Tyre and went through Sidon to the Sea of Galilee in the region of Decapolis. And they brought to him a man who was deaf and had a speech impediment. And they begged him to lay his hands on him. Look at verse number 3. Look what verse number 3 says. And taking him aside from the crowd privately. Here it is again. Why? Because he's about to use saliva. He's about to use spit again. Knowing that the people will not be edified if he does this publicly. Because the same reaction that we're having in 2022, people was going to have the same reaction back then. Do you not know, man? Most people can compose themselves of things that you say about them. But if you spit on them, all bets are off. It doesn't matter if you're at the job. People will lose their job, okay? People will lose their job if you spit on them. You can cuss them out. You might can even slap some people. But if you spit on somebody, I'm telling you right now, all bets are off. All bets are off. That is the worst of the worst. That is the low of the low. But look what the Messiah does. Same way we read in John when he was dealing with the man that was blind. He had him away from the crowd, and then he spit in the dirt, made mud with it. Now we're seeing he's dealing with a deaf man. The crowd brings the deaf man to the Messiah. And what the Messiah does? Because he understands the people. He understands that there's certain things you just can't do in front of people. There's certain demonstrations that's not even, why? First of all, everybody don't have, this is why you see Peter later on when he goes in the room to resurrect Tabitha. You know what he does? He sends faithless people out the room. Why? Because he can't take her body anywhere. So those who don't have faith, yo, get up out of here. If you don't have faith to believe, I'm telling you right, if you don't have faith to believe that the Messiah can heal folks, get out the room. Get out. We don't need you around. We don't need your doubting self around. Don't need you around. Doesn't mean we're kicking you out of fellowship. There ain't none of that. But this now is a spiritual matter that is above your pay grade, that you don't have the jurisdiction, nor do you have the identification or the pass, or you don't have the security background check to enter into this realm of a restricted area. So we need you to go ahead and get out the room, go out the door somewhere, go sit in your car, go do something, go do whatever you got to do. And then after it's over, then you can come back. But look what it says. He says in verse number 33, it says, and taking him aside from the crowd privately, he put his fingers in his ears. And after spitting, touch his tongue. Now think about this. I want y'all to check this out. Look at what it said. He put his fingers in the man's ear and then put spit on the man's tongue. All this was done away from the crowd. None of this was televised. See? Why? Because mature leaders who mature spiritually and practically know there's certain things that you just can't do in front of the people. It don't mean that you don't have faith. They don't have it to do that. They don't have it to do that. So to make sure that everybody is edified and make sure deliverance takes place, these things are done privately. So many times the Messiah will heal people and tell them, go and tell no one. But they had met a man that had done something for them that nobody had done before, in which the teachers of the day should have been functioning in that realm of power, but yet they were so caught up in their education and having so much knowledge to where they couldn't grow spiritually. So at the end of the day, the Messiah comes on the scene, brings forth a demonstration, does certain things in front of the crowd, but most of the radical things like this, it was done privately. And taking them aside from the crowd privately, he put his fingers in his ear, and after spitting, touched his tongue. And looking up to heaven, he sighed and said to him, Ephrathah, that is, be open. And his ears were open. His tongue was released, and he spake plainly. Here's the thing about this too. The blind don't even see it coming. That's another thing in this. The blind man in John couldn't see him spit in the dirt to make the mud. The crowd wasn't going to see. Why? Because the crowd was just as blind as the man who was about to receive the healing. So what did he do? Privately. Here's the deaf man. What happened? Privately. The deaf man don't even know it's coming either. But yet he's deaf and he can't articulate his fears properly. So guess what? The Messiah knew that. Takes him off privately, performs the miracle. Performs the miracle for the blind man, performs the miracle for the deaf man. All done privately, not openly to the people, not amongst non-believers. And this is the reason why Pastor Mike Todd is in the situation that he's in right now. Because he wanted to do a demonstration, wanted to bring from a great teaching, but failed to realize the audience that he's dealing with. And this is not just people of non-believers. These are people that have say they've accepted the Messiah, but yet this was done in such a manner to where it would gross anybody. And therefore, the word and the demonstration is totally missed. It's all about edification. Okay? Let's look at this. This is the last one. I think this might be the last verse. Let me see. Yep, last passage of scripture, and we're done. So now here's a blind man. Mark chapter number 8, 22 through 26. All right. And they came to Bethsaida, and some people brought to him a blind man and begged him to touch him. And he took the blind man by the hand and led him out the village. And when he had spit on his eyes and laid his hands on him, he asked, "Do you see anything?" And he looked up and said, "I see people, but they look like trees walking." Then Jesus laid hands on, or Yeshua laid hands on his eyes again and opened his eyes. His sight was restored and he saw everything clearly. But look what the Messiah says. Why? Because they were not in the village. They were not amongst the crowd. They were not amongst the crowd again. All this spitting situation is done privately, not publicly, not to gross people out, not to even not to do any of that. This is not a prop. This is not just a demonstration. No, this right here is a miracle that needed to be taken place amongst people who had disabilities, so that way that they may go back and their deliverance becomes deliverance to a people and builds faith in others. It was a domino effect. If I get one, all I need is one. I can get one and change a whole village by this one person. He says in verse 26, and he sent him to his home, saying, "Do not even enter the village." I want to leave that with y'all, man. Let me stop sharing my screen here. I just want to come on, man, and just really look at that. I think it's very important to really look at that, man, and really get an understanding of really what's going on. I think that we all have to use wisdom in the day in which we live, man. We have to. We can't just be caught up in trying to just have great teachings and great illustrations and great demonstrations and all that type of stuff. We have to also consider the people. We have to also consider the people and where they're at. There's a whole lot of miracles and things that was just done privately amongst the disciples. There was conversations that was had amongst the disciples. I mean, even the Messiah didn't take everybody with him on the Mount of Transfiguration. He even took a select. He took 3 out of his disciples, out of his 12. Everything ain't for everybody. Everybody can't go. Every demonstration isn't for the public and the crowd. It's not about gaining followers and attention and getting booked to speak at conferences and all. That was clearly not the Messiah's plan. That was never his idea. All right. All I'm saying is that we have to use wisdom and be mindful with the things that we do. We have to be wise in the things that we say, because we fail to realize, yes, even the things that we say may be true, but we don't know the impact. And we don't want to be responsible for the negative impact you have on others because you're trying to do something to bring forth a demonstration or clarity. It's never about the demonstration, but it's always about the edification. Okay, that's very important. So I leave that with y'all, man. I hope all of y'all be blessed. I pray to the Father Baruch all of you. Grace, peace, and many blessings to you all. Thank you all for jumping on. I pray that there's a level of conviction that hits the brother to really understand that, you have to make sure that you do things. You just can't do them without thinking and praying about certain things. It is, again, there's levels of wisdom that must be done. I've done that teaching. I've had that teaching. I've done demonstrations before, but I would not dare to do things like that in a public setting, especially with the time in which we live in, especially with all of the stuff that's going on. People are losing hope just in trying to figure out if they're not going to have any food. All right. We should be trying to build up the faith of the people to be able to reside in faith and not just sit around here and be on a seesaw of faith. I think it's very important that we really need to understand the times in which we're living in. And even brothers and sisters who are pastors and everything, you need to reflect and think about the time in which we live in. We're not living in the same times anymore. All right. We're not living in the same times anymore. People, we're returning back to the way a lot of the things were done in Acts. Just the community. People need to have faith. They need to be able to trust that the Father is going to hear them. They need to be resolved. They need to really deal with a lot of spiritual matters and not be out here trying to figure out the next car they're going to get and all that other stuff. And you got next and all that other money, this and money, all that stuff. We're in a different time, man. And I think that people really need to understand that, especially if you're a leader out here, and really understand to be able to empower the people. Why? Because of the fact that people cannot be codependent upon you when they're going through situations. They need to know how to get direct access to the Father, to the Son who came and died for them. He is the intercessor. He is the one that stands in the gap between us and the Father. And so that needs to be really, really be stressed in the day and age in which we live, so that way people don't fall by the wayside and they don't lose hope. When you lose hope, it's pretty much over for you. And I think that we're in a day and age now where people are becoming faithless. They are on the verge of losing hope. So we need to make sure as leaders that we be able to guide and direct the people back, and to be able to give them the boost that they need. Everybody talking about boosters. People need to have a faith booster. That's what we need in today's time. People need a faith booster, that the one that they trusted for so many years have not failed them or let them down, even in a time like this. All right. Thank you all. I pray that you all were blessed by this message, and continue to elevate your prayer life. Continue to do everything that you need to do Don't make studying the most important thing, but put it beneath prayer. All right. Thank you all. Grace to you and shalom.